Hey, American Lonsdale fan here again, and with another video, something that I've wanted to discuss for a while, and I get the opportunity. And that has to do with a trend that's been going on for the past 10 years in terms of certain designs in tactical knives. Basically, there's some knife companies and designers who have decided to make folding knives that when they are closed, you still have less than lethal options to it. So for example, this is of course the Hoffner knife, also known as American Tactical Apparel. And when the knife is closed, you've got two ends. You've got a rough end here, which can be used as an impact weapon device, as well as the rear end, which has a pain compliance tool. It's not the only one. If you're familiar with Doug Marcaida and the Dart XT, you'll find that this also has, when you have it in reverse grip, the window breaker end, which can be used as an impact tool, and sometimes they refer to the ring as a knuckle duster. And I hate when they do that. I hate it when they refer to that. We'll talk about it later. And here's an even older design. This is the Gara 2, which when closed has a protruding metal end in the tang, which can be used as a pressure point self-defense tool. Now, here's a reason I don't like when knife designers put those less than lethal devices in their design themselves. Now, for the record, I have great respect for all three of these knife companies and all three of the knife designers. This is of course Brian Hoffner, Michael Janisch of Martial Blade Concepts, and of course Doug Marcaida. So I am not faulting any of them. I'm just looking at the one element of their designs from another perspective. Okay, here's my problem. First and foremost is things like this is not necessary. I can take my cheap little NRA lockback knife made in Taiwan or China that they give you when you become a Golden Eagle or when you've donated enough, and guess what? Even though this is far from a tactical knife, when it's closed, I can still use it as an impact weapon or as a pain compliance tool. So putting this extra stuff on it is not necessary. That's number one. Number two, and this is probably the most important element, and that is, let's make things real clear. This is a lethal force option. Ultimately, yes, a knife is a tool, nothing more. But when you decide to use this against another human being, it's a lethal force option. It's a lethal use of force. All right, no court in the land is going to believe that you were intending to do anything but kill your opponent or kill your attacker when you pop this out. The minute you pull it out of your pocket and it comes into your hand, this is a lethal force option, period. It's too often we think of this as being one level below the firearm. Not true. The court looks this as a deadly weapon, so will they see the firearm as a deadly weapon. No disagreement there. Okay. So, having said that, what happens in many states, maybe not all, but in many states, you go to use this against another human being, even if it's closed, you are intending, in their eyes, intending to use lethal force. They're not going to care whether this thing is open or whether it's closed. The minute this comes out and you intend to use it, it is a lethal force option. It is a lethal use of force. You're intending to cause serious bodily injury or death. So that becomes a problem, especially when, according to a lot of the designs, is if somebody puts their hands on you, I go to pull this out and I hit them, okay? And if the fight escalates, I can be seen as being at fault because I chose to bring out a weapon. They don't care whether it's open or closed. I intended to use lethal force. That's a big problem. It's going to be a big problem for you in court as well. Okay. Second part, or third part that I have an issue with. I think this idea works in a laboratory, for lack of a better word. What I mean by that is it works in theory. I don't know how well it works in actual practice. Remember that even if I intend to just use impact force with this, okay, that means the fight's on. That means a full-on fight is going down, and I'm a part of it. And in theory, I'm supposed to use this when I'm just legally and morally obligated to use only impact use of force, and then my opponent or my attacker escalates it to lethal force, and instead of hitting him here, I go ahead and pop it. Now I can use the lethal force option. I don't know how well that works in practice, because when you're amped up in that fight or flight moment, how much sense are you going to have to pop this and then strike? And this particularly is a good design. How much more, I would argue, would it be more difficult to say use like this, and I'm impacting or something, and then somehow I got to flip this open and use it. I just don't see that being practical, quite honestly. I think it's so much better to simply see this as it is. It's a lethal force option. The minute I decide to use this against another human being, I'm intending to use lethal force, and I should see it as that. So if I am not morally or legally justified in using lethal force, this needs to stay where it is. I need to use my empty hand skills, or maybe grab OC spray, something else, before I decide to get this in hand, period. The only time that this needs to come in hand is when I am morally and legally justified to use lethal force, period. And the minute this comes in hand, this thing needs to be out, period. Because it's not going to do me extra good it being closed. All right? It's just the whole concept does not quite make sense to me, and so I have an issue. To kind of look at it of a different perspective is this: for those of you who live in CCW states where you can carry a concealed firearm, are you going to honestly tell me if somebody grabs you that the court or the law is going to have no problem with you pulling out your Glock 19 pistol and pistol whipping him and say, well, I didn't shoot him, I just hit him? The problem is you brought that weapon out, and of course that means you intended to use lethal force. Most courts are going to see it as such. Same thing here. I brought this out, I intended to use lethal force. Now, I have a hard time getting over that concept. Let's reverse it around for a minute. Let's say that I'm attacking you, the viewer. So I'm trying to get into your place of business. You own a small business, I'm trying to get in, you don't want me in, you say, hey, get back, okay, and you put your hands on me. All right? And all of a sudden I whip this out, hit your arm. Well, what are you gonna think? You recognize this as a knife, you're gonna amp up, and you're going to hopefully knock me out or grab some kind of makeshift weapon. And you'd be justified in doing so because I just pulled out a weapon. And I not only pulled out a weapon, I pulled out a lethal force weapon. So, I don't know, just something to think about. Like I said, I do like Hoffner knives. I like all the knives that Doug Markita has designed, and I like all the knives that Michael Janisch design. Certainly they know a lot more than I do about certain things, but I consider myself an intelligent human being, so I just have questions. Okay? Like I said, I wouldn't have bought these had I not liked them so much, but I just take issues with these little extra less than lethal designs. It just doesn't make sense. A knife is a tool, and it should be a lethal weapon, period. Well, I just hit the 10-minute mark, and I'm going to close it right there because I promise not to ramble on too long. So 10 minutes is kind of my limit. So anyway, God bless you and those you love. And this is American Lonsdale Fan.